Welcome everybody to this PayTrace Power30. If you haven't been on one of these webinars before, I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping and kind of an agenda on what to expect. PayTrace Power30 is your insight into PayTrace and some of our partners and industry experts out there to give you some information and really create a little bit of a dialogue with everybody so that you can go and be more successful out in the industry. We've only got about half an hour here, so we're going to get through this pretty quickly. And if you do have any questions, comments, emotional outbursts, we are keeping everybody muted. But if you go onto Zoom and you wiggle your mouse around on that Zoom window, you should see a Q&A box. Open that bad boy up, send in your questions to myself and our speaker here today. We're going to shell out about 5 minutes or so at the end. So the earlier you get those questions in, the more likely that we're going to be able to answer them live. I will say, any questions that aren't answered live, we will be distributing amongst the PayTrace team and our guest so that we can follow up and get you the answers that you need. So if that sounds good, let's introduce our speaker today. With us, we have CC Sales Pro President and ISO AMP President. And James, you probably have lots of other companies and stuff. You've got all sorts of projects. But James Shepard is here with us. And we're really excited. Welcome, James.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be on anything with PayTrace. Always love it.
That's awesome. We did a presentation. I want to say it was maybe almost a year ago. Is that right?
Wow, time flies, but yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So some of you may have seen it, but about a year ago, we partnered with James's company ISO AMP for a statement analyzer tool that really works with PayTrace's interchange optimization. So if you're interested in that, we'd love you to check that out. But today, we're introducing James here as part of our 100K to $1 million series. And what that is we're bringing in experts, sales experts from different industries, different backgrounds, different organizations to discuss how to make your portfolio grow and how to land larger merchant accounts. Now, before we get into the conversation here, I do want to get a little bit more of information from our audience. Launching a poll, and I want to know, what level of experience do you have in this industry? Was talking to James before this, and the presentation that we're going to be having today is really geared towards people that really understand just the terminology, right? You're really, I guess you can consider yourself an expert in the industry, or at least knowledgeable.
Wow, look at that, over half, 10+ years.
Yeah, I was going to see if you could see
the
that
right
there.
Audience.
Yeah. Definitely the right audience. Okay. So you're going to be teaching some experts here, man. No pressure.
Yeah, this is great. Look at that. It's almost 80% above 4 years.
That's pretty amazing.
Wow. I'll throw some stuff in there for you newbies as well, but that's exciting.
All right. So we're going to shut this out. So this next poll is going to be a little interesting now that we know what the audience scope looks like. But as part of this series, right, our goal is to get you guys some of the more profitable accounts. Right? We don't want to focus on a lot of the small, right, here and there merchants, but we want to get really these big accounts, these $1 million a month accounts. So we're going to launch one more poll. Thank you for bearing with us, giving us good data. But have you ever sold an account that brings over $1 million per month in credit card processing? And James, do you want to explain maybe this poll a little bit more?
Yeah. So, ultimately, when we talk about a large account, you got to kind of define it. And so I'll talk a lot about that on the first slide of my presentation. But to me, the $1 million a month in merchant, the $1 million a month in processing merchant, that is the large merchant to me. So I was really curious. And it looks like quite a few, about half and half, that have actually had that experience. So that's awesome.
Very even split. It's almost like I always say with these polls, it's like watching a horse race go. It's like this one's catching up, this one's pulling away. All right, we'll wrap that up. James, we've got a lot of PayTrace folks on here that may not have seen your videos, that have worked with you before. Would you mind just introducing yourself and a little bit about your business and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. One of the reasons I'm so excited about this particular event, Sam, is because this is not a topic that I've covered very often. And it's a big part of my personal success that I don't talk about very much. And one of the reasons is because I try to make my content accessible to everybody in the industry. And so it's pretty rare that I'm like, okay, this presentation is only if you're experienced, but that's what this is. And so for me, I got into the business almost 13 years ago.
Mhm.
I started out selling a lot of the smaller, probably the first 200 merchants that I sold locally. I was walking in face to face or calling over the phone to schedule appointments. They were smaller merchants. Um, I realized about a year into this, I'm like, wait a second. Because what happened was I sold a really big multi-location. It was like a 10 or 11 location,
Okay.
each doing 70,000 a month. And I'm like, that really wasn't that much more work than me selling the 50,000 a month merchant, and I'm making like 1,000 a month in residual off this one account. So maybe I should do that more. So I started really focusing on that, doing interchange consulting and all kinds of things where I realized, hey, I can actually leverage my expertise to make sales. So that was my path. Then from there, I started 3 different sales teams, one ISO that I sold. And then about 5, almost 6 years ago, when I sold my last ISO, I went into training and technology exclusively. So I have my consulting practice, my training company, CC Sales Pro, which everybody knows me as. And then of course, getisoamp.com is our leader in statement analysis services and technology automation. That of course we work with PayTrace there. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. So I wasn't wrong in saying that you do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of things I didn't mention there, but it's, so much stuff under that umbrella, but it's, let's just say I have a lot of fun every day.
I
So,
love it. That's awesome, man. So uh, we had met the other week, kind of talking about, well, what do we want to talk about on this call today? And one thing that I think really resonated as the topic is going to be lead generation and prospecting. And you mentioned something that was really interesting in that with all this new technology and all these different pricing structures, right? There's so many different ways to accept a credit card. There's so many ways to price things out that there's been a lot of innovation there, but not necessarily in how we prospect and how we lead generate. So I think back to when you started out 13 years ago,
yes.
it's probably very different approach,
Boy.
but
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah, it really is. Sam, I would say there's 2 big differences. I would say one is the type of merchant you're going after. I really, one of the things I realized was it was like by total accident, I sold that first big account. Um, but then after that, I'm like, well, okay, if I want to target these businesses, how do I do that?
Right.
And so that's what we're going to talk about today is, how do we target the larger businesses? But you're also right too. I mean, the technology has advanced so quickly. The payments industry is like constantly changing and evolving. And so I see a lot of salespeople that are they're not adjusting. They're not changing their prospecting. And it's like, oh, you don't understand. I've totally changed. I sell Clover now. Okay, well, yes, that's a change, but how have you changed your prospecting so that you can sell that? So I think the key is understanding that, not only has the industry changed, but also if you're an expert and you really want to make a lot of money, you've got to go after larger merchant accounts, which is what we'll talk about today.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you've put together a little bit of a presentation. I don't want to take away from that. So James, if you're ready, I'd love for you to share your screen. And I think we want to we're keeping this a little bit in the lens of traditional processing, right? Is that correct? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So I'll talk about that a little bit. I mean, the idea here, Sam, is most of these smaller merchant accounts today, they are having an increased interest in one of 3 things. All 3 of these things are bad news for experts in our industry. Number 1 is simple pricing. So they like Square, they like Stripe, they like flat rate. Well, if you're an expert, I mean, how much expertise do you need to tell somebody I'll sell you at 2.69%? There's not much to that. Number 2, they're interested in cash discounting. Cash discounting is almost simpler because it's like, I'm not going to charge you anything. So it's free. Well, it doesn't take a lot of expertise to sell that. Or number 3, it's surcharging, which is a little more complex and definitely, the larger merchants are more interested in that. But again, usually the pricing structure is extremely simplistic there. And so what I'm seeing is these smaller merchants, going after them doesn't require as much expertise unless you want to go after them from a technology, software, ISV integration perspective, but that's not really a payments expertise. So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing so many agents who are like, hey, so many of you on here, I've been doing this for 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And what sets me apart from the person that just got into the business 2 months ago that's selling cash discounting and they're building their portfolio faster than I am? What is going to set me apart? And so, of course you have the sales ability. Of course you have the confidence. Of course you have these beliefs that are going to allow you to have that peak performance. But from a business perspective, you really want something else that sets you apart? What can you do that they can't do? I think is the ultimate question.
Got it. Awesome.
Yeah. So let's dive in. I mean, really, I'm going to give you a very, very practical 3-step process to prospect large merchant accounts. Okay. So again, this is all predicated on the fact that you are a payments expert. So that means when you look at a processing statement, you have some idea what you're looking at. Now I look at probably 800 statements a month from our, we probably get about 4,000 a month in our statement analysis company. And I end up looking at a bunch of them and I get confused every once in a while, but I have a pretty good idea what I'm looking at. I can figure it out. And so, if that's you, if you're that payments expert, this is really for you. And this is telling you how you can leverage that expertise. So we're just going to dive in and I'm going to give you 3 steps. Okay. They're very, very simple steps. Okay. And very practical. This is probably one of the most practical presentations I've ever done. I'm going to literally show you exactly what to do to sell large merchants. And I know it works because I sold a bunch of them doing exactly this. And now I've had the opportunity to consult for hundreds of ISOs and agents that have also been able to make this switch. In fact, it's funny, Sam, yesterday, I spent an hour and a half with an experienced agent, 8-9 years in the business, that is doing exactly what I'm describing right now, and it's already taking off. So it's pretty awesome to be able to share this because, again, I don't think I've ever shared this before. So one of the huge advantages of selling large merchant accounts is that you can get accurate, up-to-date data. All right. All of you on here, I'm sure, have purchased a list of businesses and you found that it was only 60% accurate. The other 40%, the businesses were closed. The contact information was incorrect. It was just a mess. That is not the case when you're going after larger businesses. I'm sure the contact information can be a little wonky, but if they're saying this is a business that is a large business, they probably have good data. So I really believe the first step here is you want to buy that list of businesses that you want to go after. Hopefully you've been in the industry a long time. You've got residual, you've got a little bit of capital to invest, not much. It doesn't take a lot. But I'm going to show you that real quick. So the website I like to use for this is infousa.com. If you go there, it redirects you because they got purchased by Data Axle. But you can go there and just say you want to build a business list. Now, obviously, Sam, this is going to be recorded, I'm assuming, and they can get this right. Okay. So I'm going to fly through it pretty quick, go through it later, but I wanted to show you an example of building one of these lists so I could be really, really specific with you. I did a 30-mile radius around my home address personally. That gave me 10,280 businesses. So I'm in a pretty rural area, as you can tell. Then I said, I only want businesses that do between, oh, that's a typo. I'm sorry, 1 million and 20 million in annual volume. So it's not 2, it should be 20. Sorry about that. But 1 million to 20 million in annual volume. All right. Now let me explain why I did that. So if I do $1 million in annual volume, we divide that by 12 and we're a little less than 100,000, a month in total revenue. Now with this though, a lot of times I'm going after these e-commerce or card not present merchants where sometimes 100% of their revenue is payment processing. It is cards. So that's why I choose $1 million. Now I have built them before where I went 2 million or even 5 million to 20 million. And you can definitely get some different numbers that way. But this one is going to give you usually about 20% of the businesses in your area are going to fall into this bucket. And again, these are all things that you can do within InfoUSA. Everybody on here, you could follow this step by step through the InfoUSA, build a business list, and you could do exactly what I'm showing you very, very easily. It's very intuitive. I then select privately held. So I don't want publicly traded companies. Personal preference. I've just wasted a lot of time on publicly traded companies. They are usually very difficult to get in with and all of that. So that took me down about 500 businesses. Then I excluded franchises. So they are also very tricky. I have done it before where I've included them, but you have to find the corporate office, the franchisor, not the franchisee in many cases, and it's a little bit tricky. Now, the next one I exclude is finance, insurance, and real estate. In my experience, total waste of time with this list. So now we're down to 1798. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to show you a few others you could exclude. This is actually the list that I personally like to purchase right here. So I've gotten rid of all the ones I want to get rid of. Okay. Now I'll show you how to narrow it a little bit more real quickly. You could exclude manufacturing. Okay. You can see I dropped another 40, 50 businesses, but by doing that, I might have missed a really good B2B client that's manufacturing, but they're selling to other businesses and they are taking B2B cards. So there could be some level 2 optimization. So I don't love that. Exclude mining. Mining is a really weird one, but you'll get some crazy businesses in there. And again, I've had some that were good. And, I'm only dropping, 12 businesses from my list. And the last one that I recommend you really don't exclude is non-classified. A lot of people will exclude that one. And they're like, well, non-classified, that means they don't know what it is. Actually, what it means is nobody from the payments industry has ever called them before. So they actually might be really, really good. I've had some, excuse me, I've had some in there that I've called. So, you can see you go from 798 to 1734 from 1798. You only drop like 64. Just keep those 64 in there. You go through them. Maybe you throw some of them out, but there's going to be some good ones in there. So it's going to cost you $753. I just ran it this morning to buy 1,734 business listings. And that is the full package. That's giving you address, phone number. It's giving you revenue size, number of employees, credit rating, any contacts that they're aware of that are decision makers, all of that. So this is step one, build your list. You need to have that list. These are the people that you're trying to sell. Okay, well, we got our list. What do we do with our list, right? Do we just start walking into all of them? No, I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, we want to sell large businesses. How do we do it? Go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So again, the things I'm showing you today, these are for sales experts. These are for industry experts that have a little bit of capital. I think Sales Navigator right now is like $130 a month for an individual user. So you just spent $800 on your list. Now you're going to spend $130 to be in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is just an unbelievably powerful tool when you're going after large entities, large organizations. What do you do? Well, you go to linkedin.com/sales. And once you have a membership there and you can do a free trial, you're going to search that company name. So you just put the name of the company. Don't put the name of the contact. Just put the name of the company in there. And then it should by default take you to what they call account leads. So an account on LinkedIn is a company. And so we're going to look at an account. And then we're going to click on decision makers. So when you click on that account, it's going to give you a list of all of the employees of that company. So for instance, I looked at Sheetz. Sheetz is a gas station chain that's based like 15 minutes from my office. There's 14,000 employees of Sheetz that are on LinkedIn because they have like all these people that work in the gas stations, the corporate office and all that. Well, I clicked on decision makers and it gave me like 130. And at the very top was the CEO, Mr. Sheetz. And then it was the COO, his brother, Mr. Sheetz. And then, and so that's who I want. I want those decision makers. Then what you're going to do is you're going to click on each one, research them on LinkedIn, see what they're all about. Look at their LinkedIn profile. Are they engaging on LinkedIn? Are they active on LinkedIn? Can you actually contact them on LinkedIn? Right. Then collect any available contact information. So one of the things I love about LinkedIn Sales Navigator is that if that person has their email address and phone number there, it will display that. So grab whatever contact information you can. Then you're going to send them a connection request, shoot them an email, right? And just reach out to them. Then this one might surprise some of you. Walk in within 7 days. You say, well, walk in where? Well, if you did your homework, you're probably going to be able to figure out where the main corporate office is. And then you can walk in. Make sure you have at least 2 or 3 available contacts at that company. So it might be the president, the company operating officer, the CFO. Maybe there's even like a VP of finance or a purchasing officer. You need kind of a lower level connection as well. And you just walk in and say, hey, I connected on LinkedIn with these 3 individuals. And I told them I'd swing by, and in your connection request, you said I'll swing by. And I told them I'd stop by and just say hello, drop off my card, or any of them available. Try to get in with them. If you don't, that's fine. Then reach back out. Okay. So
you mind if I interrupt on that one really quickly, James? So I just want to add some validity to this. Back in my previous industry, before I got into payments, I was doing selling in sports, and we had a competition within the NBA on, sales reps. And the number one consistent sales rep for 3 years running only did this, strictly social selling. And this is probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
Right.
He never once went through and just randomly called a bunch of phone numbers through the phone book. He put that away. He was very strategic about his time. And honestly, he didn't make a ton of calls. He maybe made 20 to 30 touches a day when others were making 100 plus, but he was so smart about using this process. So just seeing this here is totally, this is exactly how it needs to be managed.
Thanks. And I think one of the things you mentioned there that I really like is those 20 to 30 touches a day. In our industry, unfortunately, a lot of experienced reps, they heard that and were like, that's a lot, so, but yeah, you do still have to put the work in. You can't make one contact a day and expect to be successful at this. Yes, it's social, but it's not magical. It's social. So you do still have to put the work in. You're going to be doing this for 5, 6, 7 hours a day. And so, you're going to be building your contact list. All right, I want to get to this quickly because this is where I want to spend some time is, pitching your expertise. Okay. So how are you going to set yourself apart? So there's several approaches that you can use to set yourself apart. I'm going to go through them very quickly here, and we'll have time for Q&A. But number one is the cost reduction pitch. Be very careful. You're not, quote unquote, saving them money. These are big companies. They don't think in those terms. What they think of is vendors and cost reduction. So you want to be a cost reduction specialist. So I deal with payment processing. I'm a payments expert, and I'm an expert at reducing the cost of payment processing for large companies. That's the way you're presenting yourself. The consulting pitch, this is where you actually charge for your expertise. So this is where you come in and say, hey, initially, I'm not even going to switch your processing. I'm not even here to pitch you on changing credit card processing companies. But if you pay me $500, I will look at your last 3 processing statements, make a detailed report for you, and tell you what you could be doing differently to reduce your cost structure. Okay. You would be surprised how many of these large companies would eat that up, pay you the $500 and literally pay you to sell them. So you come back and say, hey, here's what I can do. And then you can either make money by saying, hey, I'm going to get a percentage of the savings that I provide to you, or you can make money by coming back and saying, your current company really is, not taking full advantage of these cost saving opportunities. I could switch you to the PayTrace gateway and my processing company, and, we could really, help you out. So again, notice here we're setting ourselves apart. That is not a pitch that somebody that's new to the industry could make. This is something only an experienced rep could make. The third one is the technology, the PCI compliance type pitch. So the idea is you're leveraging risk and efficiency. How secure is your payment network? What are you doing with PCI compliance right now? Who's handling that for you? Your point of sale system, how efficient is it for your company? How do you like it? What data are you getting from your point of sale system? And so thinking of it more of a technology PCI compliance type of a scenario that you're going in with. Again, if you have that expertise, you can pull that off. The fourth and final one here is the revenue growth pitch. This is where you can come in and talk about reclaiming lost revenue, helping them with chargebacks and understanding how to win those chargebacks, helping them understand how to get cart abandonment back, helping them understand all of these different things that can cause rejections, declines, chargebacks, all of these things around the payments industry, and or accepting new forms of payment, right? Like, are they accepting American Express? Are they accepting contactless payments? Do they have email, invoicing and things of that nature? And so really trying to set yourself apart in that way. So, Sam, I don't, I could spend another 3 hours on this, of course, but what I want to summarize for everybody is this. If you are a payment processing expert, I really encourage you to find your niche. And you don't have to just do this. You could say, well, I kind of, this cash discounting thing seems kind of interesting. I'd like to get a little taste of that. Great. Go ahead, knock yourself out. Take your current portfolio and switch them all to cash discount, as many as you can, and quadruple your residuals. Great. But then why don't you carve out 2 hours a day to work on this? That's what I did. I had 2 hours every day that I worked on this. And then whenever I would really get a big one on the hook, which would happen usually 2 or 3 times a month, I would get one where it's like, okay, they're ready to, like, the executive team's willing to meet with me. I dropped everything and I focused 100% on that deal because I knew if I closed it, it was going to be 500 to 1,000 or more per month in residual. So hopefully you'll take this information and think about how you can differentiate yourself and leverage all of that experience that you built up over the last few years.
Mm-hmm. I really like that first bullet point on there, James, the cost reduction pitch, not savings. I hear reps all the time talking about just saving money. And it sounds like it's very much like the retail space where that's all is kind of the race to zero is what we see a lot. But in these larger businesses, savings isn't what they want to hear, right?
Right. They want to hear cost reduction. And I think, and again, Sam, I think the big takeaway is the thing they want more than anything else is they want to know they're talking to an expert.
Exactly.
And when you present that to them, really, no matter which of these approaches you use, the thing that's going to get the business is your confidence and your level of expertise.
Yeah. I mean, That initial poll that we launched said that 50% of the people that are on this call right now have 10 plus years experience in the industry, right? We want to maximize that experience. We want to leverage that as much as we can. So I think that's excellent. I know that we've got about 5 minutes, and James, thank you so much. This has been excellent. And we do have this recorded. So we'll have all this information up on our YouTube page, and we'll make sure this recording is available to everybody here on today's call. I do want to tackle some of these questions that have been coming in from the audience here. A couple here from Andrew that I wanted to bring up. If back on your second step, you had mentioned walking in to a business, and a little bit of an old school approach. I know a lot of people did a lot of kind of the walk-in appointments, things like that. But Andrew's asking, does walking in unannounced, is that perceived as unprofessional? And isn't it really best to make an appointment?
It is perceived as unprofessional if you present it the wrong way. So when I walk in, the idea is you have to have an excuse or a reason that you walked in. That's the most important thing. And that goes for whether you're walking into small businesses or large. And for me, the excuse is that I was in the area. So I always walk in and say, hey, I connected with Chris through LinkedIn a few days ago about some payment processing things. And I was in the area. I thought I'd just swing by and drop off my business card. Is he in? I could just run back and shake his hand real quick and hand him a card. What you'll be surprised at is about half the time they're going to say he's not here. He works in a different office, maybe, something totally like that. It's like, well, that's no problem. But now I have the perfect reason to call Chris. So I'm going to go back out to my car and call Chris. Hey, Chris, I'm sitting in the parking lot at the Dallas office. They told me you're actually in LA today, but I just want to swing by and say hello. I know we connected on LinkedIn. Hope you're doing well. And, blah, 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 right? Start that conversation up. The other half of the time, though, it's funny. These people don't get someone to stop by. Like, that's what I love about these big companies. They don't have payment reps walking in all day long. And they're like, someone is here to, like literally in my business, as much as I screen my phone calls and my emails, if somebody walked in and said, I'm looking for James Shepard, they would get to talk to me. You know why? Because nobody walks in here. So, these big companies are more like that, and they're actually really receptive to that as long as you provide the right excuse. You're not there to sell them. You just happen to be in the area and you want to drop off a card and shake their hand.
The other thing that I found, with sales is that, especially in these companies, right, the gatekeepers are usually going to be a little less defensive just because they're not used to a bunch of walk-ins all the time. So even if somebody's out, I always use that as an opportunity to just get a little bit more of information on the company. If there's some gaps maybe, or I want to learn a little bit more about their schedules, or and just build rapport, right? I've always found that if I can be friends with the gatekeeper, whoever's in there, it makes talking to everybody else that much easier.
For sure.
Another follow-up question, James. I know you're pretty big on the cash discounting, and you do a lot of education on that. Andrew's asking, how big is cash discounting in the B2B space?
Non-existent. So surcharging is making a bit of a stab there. But these businesses are still not crazy about it as a general rule. Now, are there salespeople that are selling B2B surcharging? Yes. I don't know anybody successfully selling cash discounting to B2B. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't somebody. I'm sure somebody will email me after this and say I am, but I don't know anybody. I do know several that are selling surcharging. But yeah, the B2B clients, the problem is, again, when they're doing larger orders and things like that, it gets a little bit tricky. Now, large businesses not doing B2B transactions, just like a restaurant chain or something like that, a retail chain or something. Yeah, it's becoming much more viable. In fact, I made a couple of videos about it recently. It's becoming more viable.
Awesome. Love it. We'll have to check those out. On that note, Elena's here, and she says that she enjoys your YouTube page. So
thanks, Elena. Appreciate it.
Kudos to you from Elena. Vince, quick question here. Back to the walk-in conversation. And I think this might tie in a little bit with the current state of things, right? We're still in the COVID era, but right now, do you find more success with walk-ins versus, scheduling virtual calls?
Yes. It's funny. I wish I had the magic formula where I could tell everybody you don't ever need to walk into the businesses. And you don't, of course, there are other ways you can do it. But the problem is this: ultimately, this is a competition. You have to beat your competitors. No one wants to walk in. So my secret to success is I'm always willing to do the thing that nobody else is willing to do.
Yeah.
I'm willing to walk in, and you know what? I don't care if it's with a mask. I don't care if it's with a face shield. I don't care if you've got rubber gloves on. Walking into a business is going to set you apart from your competitors in a way that a phone call, a LinkedIn message, or an email never can.
No,
It's just the reality. That doesn't mean the other things don't work or you can't make them work. It's just walking in always works better.
I will attest that walking into a business in a full hazmat suit will set you apart. Good or bad, for sure.
Nice.
So we're right at about a time. We did have one last question I think is kind of a good way to wrap this up on, and then we actually do have a couple announcements to make. But Troy asks, going back to the getisoamp.com, right? You do statement analysis. You've got a tool that really leverages PayTrace for interchange optimization, right? The cost reduction. Now, what's the best way to utilize this? How do you get access to that?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, you mentioned the website already, but if you go to GetIsoAmp, so it's GetIsoAmp.com, right on the homepage, it says get 2 free analyses. So you can click that button and upload 2 statements for free. Maybe it's ones you just got or ones you already have and you want to see how it works. Try us out for free. Think of it like this. However you're currently doing statement analysis, we are going to do it faster, we're going to do it better, and it's going to be more accurate. So I don't care if you have your processing company doing it. Some of you have 3 processors and you send the statement to all 3. Why on earth would you do that? Like in a tool like ours, you just load those pricing templates in from all 3 companies. You could have 15 different pricing templates in there. You upload the statement one time to us. Our AI and our human assisted AI are going to take a look at it. We're going to find any optimization. We're going to find interchange padding. We're going to find junk fees. We're going to find everything. We're going to match it all up. And then all you have to do is literally click a button to choose which pricing template you want, and then deliver a beautiful PDF proposal that shows padding, it shows interchange optimization and all of that.
That's awesome. And I'll make a note here. We do send out follow-up emails to everybody that registered for today's course. So whether you're here right now or you're going to watch this following up, we'll link out our previous video with the ISOAMP demo so that everybody has access to that. So it's a really great informative video so you can actually check out the product. Cool. Last thing, I want to make an announcement. A lot of you may have expected Eric Jenks to be on this call here today. I'm not sure if we made that in the registration email. He was actually surprised by his family. They're taking him out this week for his birthday. He's traveling. I think he still might be here listening in, but connection was spotty. So I just want to call a happy birthday to Eric. And I did want to bring this up, but next month, for those of you that are in the southeast of the United States, Eric, James Shepard here, and our buddy Roger McNamara, who you may have heard on our last month's call, are going to be presenting at Southeast Acquirers Association Regional Conference, so SCAA down in Florida this year. So I'd strongly suggest if you're able to attend that conference, come check out that presentation. James, do you want, what's really the overarching topic for that call or that?
You know, it's ironically very similar to this one. The difference is we have a lot more time to talk about it, but we are going to be talking a little bit more specifically about the B2B. And so the angle, you know, it's like each of us kind of brings a unique angle. Obviously, Eric is going to be talking about the technology angle of this with PayTrace. Roger McNamara has a amazing, if you haven't heard Roger, he's amazing. We have a couple podcast episodes we did with him recently, but he's going to be talking about the sales tactics and techniques and you know, creating the right value proposition for these B2B clients. And then I'll be talking about ISOAMP and showing some examples of how you can upload these statements that have, you know, 14 pages of interchange, and you can come out with the exact to the penny proposal on interchange optimization and things of that nature. So, you know, there's a lot of things that are going to be discussed, but the big takeaway is just going to be, hey, we're trying to help you grow your portfolio and specifically these B2B clients.
Love it. A lot of good information there. James, thank you again so much for joining this call. It was a pleasure. Team, I want to thank every one of you for being on this call as well. Stay tuned. We're going to be announcing our next month's Power 30. We're going to have a special guest, Jeff Schneider from Sandler Sales Training will be joining us. And as always, if you'd like to get a hold of the PayTrace team, or if you'd like an introduction to James and his team, feel free to reach out to us at sales@paytrace.com. Again, sales@paytrace.com, and we'll get you connected to the right people. All right,
awesome.
Team.
Hey, Sam, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.